because then when you actually do the launch, it has to be financially viable. It has to make economic sense. It has to make social sense, and it has to be in line with the direction and the vision of the leaders and the people, society at large. So it cannot be just another mega project for the sake of doing projects. I think gone are the days where, despite parliament houses and 800 million on palaces, which by the way I think is a monstrosity. Don't repeat that. But I must remember it's got political links. I better not say too much. Anyway, but I think how do we make sure that, and I repeat this to my staff, and we'll go into my little presentation, so now you can see some pretty pictures instead of looking at pretty picture me. How do we make this area viable? So a lot of time was spent in the the visionary thinking. And if you have sleepless nights and really want something to read to bore you to death, I invite you to read the Comprehensive Development Plan of Iskandar Development Region. That's it. So first thing I joined when they gave me this thing, I was like, oh, better read this. But anyway, got a lot of pictures, so not too much really. Can go picture and got map again like that. Anyway, but it describes, and I think very properly, because before you do anything, you must have a vision. And then when you have a vision, you must have a plan. Don't just plunge into it and then just think that it's going to happen naturally. It will not happen naturally. Okay, so this is why planning is important. And I quote, and I can't remember who it is: "Failure to plan is planning to fail." Okay, and I remember that very, very distinctly. And of course, you can also overplan and over-strategize. So be careful of that as well. And sometimes I think we do tend to overplan as well. But very important to do have a basic plan that that understands realistic targets and also understands the vision and the needs of the people. Just divert about. Since you're all young and presumably young enough for me to influence and manipulate, I really believe in this country. Okay, despite our weaknesses. And despite our quirkiness and certain things, and probably shouldn't say too much of that, but you know what I mean. I think I believe in this country, and I believe in people such as yourselves, who are going to be the leaders of the future. And why I'm spending time telling you what I've done and how I've gotten here at this point. And I should probably say this at the end of the session, but before I get into Iskandar, because once I get into Iskandar, I'll forget anything else. But I want to say this before I leave, before I forget. Is that it's all of us who will determine what happens to this country. Okay, I mean, not just as voters, not just as once in 5 years you vote in the opposition just to make sure that the old government doesn't think about it. No. I think it's important that we have all to realize we are all responsible. Okay, it's not just about Najib or Ghani in the case of Johor. I have to MD. Otherwise, they don't let me go back. It's not about the leaders, it's about us. When I say us, includes every one of us. Okay? So if you believe, and I think you should believe because you're still here, otherwise go migrate up, go find somewhere else. By the way, the grass is always greener on the other side until you get there. Yeah. Okay? I spent enough time traveling. Amongst other things that I've done, I've traveled to Sudan, I've traveled to the Philippines, in some of the worst slum areas you can imagine in Mumbai, in Indonesia. And parts of Saudi Arabia, which I must just tell you, ladies, we have it good here, lah. Okay, we really have it good here. You want to talk about oppression? You go to Saudi Arabia, and I probably shouldn't say repeat that again. A lot of these things. By the way, you go out of this room, I will disclaim any knowledge. Never said it. Okay? But I think I've traveled into a lot of countries, not just for work, but sometimes for just to see what people are like. Egypt, countries with huge natural assets and wasted. Okay, whether it's corruption, or cronyism, or nepotism, all this zim stuff that we talk about here. You want to talk about multiple levels, you go to these countries. Okay, and just to make a note, just as a point, since we complain about our leaders in our area, not to say I support all our leaders, but just to say that how other people have it really, really bad. In Egypt, the Suez Canal, right? Everybody knows the Suez Canal. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Please, young corporate leaders, alamak. Okay, The Suez Canal, everybody, you pay a license to use it, or you pay a fee to get through the Suez Canal. Okay, not a single cent has actually reached Egyptian public. Okay, it's gone into the coffers of the government, and then and the coffers of the government doesn't necessarily mean it goes to government use. Okay? And again, I like to ask questions when I go travel, and sometimes you just ask stupid questions, and suddenly you get all these stories, and betul really, and then you go and check, and it's true enough. And some of these things are actually quite easy to investigate. We don't go there to go and instigate things. We go there to learn, understand, come back, and see how we can then better ourselves. Okay, again, going back to the point that we are all responsible. We are all responsible for this country. So don't belabor, don't moan about leaders and people not doing this, that, and everything else. Think what you can do. I don't want to quote John F. Kennedy because I'm sure everybody is going to expect me to quote. No, but you know what I mean. At the end of the day, it's up to all of us to make a difference. Okay, in whatever small way, whether in social, work, corporate, personal life, and every one of us has an opportunity and has a responsibility to do this. So I do invite you to, next time you want to go and blog and complain about somebody, think about what you should do to make it different rather than just complain. Okay? Anyway, enough said, enough lecture. I take off my motherhood statement now, and now I go into the actual presentation. Okay, what is Iskandar Malaysia? And I talked about a bit of the overall. But what's interesting here, again, history, and one of the things, just to point out as well, is we never learn from history. So we should please remember, that's one of my taglines with my family and colleagues, is that we got to learn from history. But history will tell you that the civilization, it's about trade. Yeah. So what was the main trade routes in the history of mankind, Asia and all that stuff? If you remember, the Silk Route is on land, coming across Central Asia, and the Spice Route was on water and comes through Straits of Malacca. So the connection between essentially China and India, and then further on to the Western world, was through Straits of Malacca. And that's basically why Singapore was very, very successful. You are exactly at the heart of this crossroads, or the east-west trade lanes. So if Singapore can take advantage of that, why can we not? We have essentially the same strategic location. So Iskandar is strategically located. Now, geographical coverage, and sometimes, okay, by the way, one of those things I wake up in the morning and thank God I'm in Iskandar, not Northern Corridor or Eastern Corridor. I only got one state government to handle, not four. But Iskandar is not even the whole of Johor. All of the other corridors were one of those quirky things that they decided to just put everything under one planning, and it's not easy, by the way. So I'm actually very, very pleased that we started this small, because I believe it's small templates that you can replicate, and rather than try to go big and then find out that alamak cannot handle. So this is just nice in terms of size. We like to say 3 times the size of Singapore, just to give those chairs to people down south something to think about. But it's about 550,000 acres for those of you who are inclined, otherwise 2,200 square kilometers. 3 districts and 5 local authorities. Just to illustrate the point, where we are today, we are about 1.6 million people, and projections, or rather targets, rather than projections, targets are to be 3 million, or just under half, double of that, by 2025. That's only 15 years ago, by the way. Do you all know what's the natural growth in population? Just from you getting married and having kids? About 5-6% a year. Yeah? So we are talking about accelerating that quite a bit. So it's not just from telling people to go forth and multiply and have more kids. It's actually telling people you got to move from wherever you are, comfort zone, to Iskandar. So here are the economic drivers. Now, okay, very nice. 3 times size of Singapore, very big. But what do you do? And okay, this is where the planning aspects come. Recognize that you have a big thing. Although of course, in terms of size, you compare to the other corridors, it's very small. This is the smallest, but it's big in any context. And what can you do to make it? What can you do to accelerate, number one, growth, and then what can you do to make it implementable quickly? Yeah. So we talk about the economic clusters, and then we talk about the flagship zones. So here, what we've done was we've broken up, the Iskandar region into 5 flagship zones, A, B, C, D, E. Just for those of who are not so inclined, but.